Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Um, don't mind me if one of my cats decides to join in a little bit today. One of my cats, Masa, is currently sitting on the desk, just hanging out, sleepy, ready to join. I will try to keep her from walking across the keyboard because sometimes she likes to do that, but we'll see what happens. My other cat, Tamale, is somewhere, so I don't foresee him joining the conversation today, but Masa might. So we'll see. We'll see. But yes, hello everyone. I hope you're doing well. This is episode 41 of Overtures, and let's go ahead and get into it. My guest today has a PhD in theater and performance studies from the University of Maryland. Her primary research interest is on theater professionals who take their knowledge of craft into non-theatrical settings. Her dissertation, titled Transforming the Beast, the Theater Laboratories of the Disney Renaissance from 1984 to 1994, detailed how theater practitioners helped turn the Walt Disney Company from a million-dollar company into a billion-dollar company. She currently teaches theater history at University of the Arts and has been a professional theater maker for over a decade. She previously served as the company manager for the Philadelphia Women's Theater Festival and general manager for the critically acclaimed off-Broadway and Edinburgh Fringe production I Will Speak for Myself. She directed the award-winning off-Broadway premiere of Dorian Gray the Musical, and her work on The Triumph of Isabella, an immersive experience, was exhibited at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. My guest and I have kind of met before. We met over Zoom thanks to our alma mater, but we'll get into that more a little bit when I bring her on. So without further ado, this is Dr. Christen Madnracchia. Hi. Happy to have you here. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about theater.
Yes, exactly. So obviously we share an alma mater, being Villanova. You zoomed into my musical theater class a couple of times to help Valerie out with some lectures, but other than that, we've only really talked to each other via comments on social media. So this is super fun.
Yes, I'm excited because we both have the same award too.
Yes.
Sally Early Award for service to the department. It's kind of like a spirit award.
Yeah, it's definitely like the cheerleaders of the department, kind of.
Yeah, the ones who uplift and the ones who volunteer a lot. So we're the helpers.
Yes, exactly. And then I know I was class of 2021. What class were you?
I was class of 2015.
Gotcha. Okay, I was trying to figure out in the timeline of things.
It was closer than it had. Like I think that was 7 years ago, and I'm like, oh wow, that really feels like it's like 2 years ago, right?
You're like, there's no way. Like there's no way.
It's been like almost a decade since I graduated Villanova, and I'm like, where has all of that time gone?
Where has that time gone?
What is
truly
time?
though? No, truly, because I'm already like, oh, the people that I went to Villanova with are. I mean, it's only a 2-year program, so this is bound to happen. But I'm like, oh, I don't know any of the students anymore. I think like one Ryan Henry because she was an undergrad when I was in the program, but now I'm like, oh my gosh. That's crazy. I don't know anyone anymore.
Yes.
But
that's like the first realization. And then you're like, and then it just gets weirder from there.
And then you're like, oh no. Well, and then what shows did you end up doing when you were there? Because I know you did Three Penny Opera simply because I ended up wearing your hat from it in Slap Happy.
And I got so
that
excited.
red bowler
I love
hat.
that hat. Let me tell you
so
how
good.
much. I said to Janice, the costume designer, I said, can I buy this hat? She's like, no. And it's, and I was like, fine, but it's a really good hat.
No, it really is.
I did Three Penny Opera. I was the street singer. I was one of 3 street singers.
Cool.
The director, so Dr. Valerie Joyce, who directed that, she did like this really innovative thing with that production. To like basically to bring more women into it, like to find ways to like center the women, which has never been done before.
Well, and especially on Three Penny Opera, it's just like all the men.
Yeah, it's Brecht in general, but like especially Three Penny. Yeah. So so she was being really, really innovative within the confines of what you can and cannot do with the text. So I was the street singer. And I had that magnificent red hat. I was wearing a suit. It was like, and there was like a historical basis for that. The dramaturg, Hal Martinson, like discovered this like gang of women in Victorian England who all wore suits. And I was like, sign me up.
You're like, that's sick. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. So it was just like the coolest thing. And I was in 50% of the productions that happened while I was there. So I
cool.
did Three Penny. I was in Fallen Angels, which is a Noel Coward comedy. I played Saunders the maid, and it was so much fun. Probably one of the most fun productions, and that was challenging. I had to play the piano and sing at the same time. They had to bring in like a French tutor, so that to make sure that I have the accent of somebody who could speak fluent French. I had to take like lessons in like etiquette and protocol and setting a table. It was one of the most physically and mentally challenging productions of my life, but it was a comedy.
It was of course.
But I was so proud of that production. And then I did Light in the Piazza. And I was cast as Franca Naccarelli. And that was another one. We needed to bring in accent coaches and language coaches. And it was Peter Hilliard, who does a lot of the music there. Taught me how, like, and people think that because I'm Italian, they think that I can just, speak Italian with a good accent.
Listen, and you're like, I don't know.
We were Sicilian peasants. The dialect that we spoke was nothing like the Florentine characters and the high class, So people like came to see the show and they were like, "Oh, do you speak fluent Italian?" And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Let's go with that. Yes, of course I do." But I felt that was another one. I just felt fabulous. I had because she's like this like Sophia Loren-esque character. I had a wig, I had a fake butt, I had fake boobs, I had fake eyelashes, but damn, I looked gorgeous. Damn, I looked great.
You're like, hell yeah.
And I don't often get cast as that was like the first time in my life, probably the first and only time in my life that I got cast as the sexy character. I'm usually the character actress. I'm usually either the bitch or the comic relief or both. So that was anxiety inducing for me at first, but Valerie was just such a magnificent director who helped guide me through that. And I think I discovered my own inner fabulousness with that. And then I was also in they did Everyman, and I was one of the five.
Yes.
It was awesome. It was like this like punk rock.
No, I've seen pictures from that production and it looked sick. It
was great. It was great. And the costume designer on that, Courtney Bocha, she did that for her thesis, like with the whole punk outfit. Probably the most comfortable pair of pants I've ever worn in my life. But she and I have worked together on like probably about 20 productions since then.
I love that. I love that.
So that was actually our second, because I was the ASM on the show before that, and she was the stage manager. So you find your lifelong collaborators when you do these shows.
It's so true. It's so true. And then what did you end up doing for your thesis at Villanova? And I'm always so curious because like everyone in the department, it's such a multidisciplinary program that I'm like, I truly have no idea what people may or may not do.
Let me tell you, I love thesis season. And that's what I'm going to call it. Like whenever you get to like around like that spring semester and everyone's doing their thesis, you get like May. Once you get to like May, I call it thesis season. And you never know what you're going to get. Like so many brilliant, creative people, like you say, doing all of these very, very different things. Like who's doing a solo thesis, who's doing that. I did my thesis in directing.
Oh, awesome.
I directed 45 minutes of The Last Days of Judas Iscariot. And I did it so back in the day, Gary, the building on campus, Gary is the old law school building. They had the room that is now a studio was set up to be a mock trial room.
Yes.
All of the furniture was still in there. The judge's bench, the witness stand, the project, all of it was still in there. So I said, I want to do Last Days of Judas Iscariot in Gary in this mock courtroom.
I love a found space.
It was so good. And what a good lesson in producing theater in a found space, because I had to basically import my own light grid. I had to it was because I was a scenic assistant, so I was very proficient with power tools, and me and the other scenic assistants, it was Lauren Davenport, Chris Dayette, who were both in the show as well, because that's Villanova. You're like,
right, you're in everything. You're triple dipping.
We built like kind of like a frame out of like 1x and 2x, and we bolted some Fresnels onto that thing, and we created like a nice wash. We used a lot of practicals. a lot of like clip lights, and like it kind of had like this, because it's supposed to take place in purgatory. It kind of had like a little bit of a post-apocalyptic feel to it.
Yeah.
Like a post-apocalyptic cabaret almost,
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
like Mr. Burns before Mr. Burns. And it one of the toughest scenes, of course, is the scene with Jesus and Judas where they're confronting each other in hell. Right. And I didn't know how to light it. I just didn't know how to light it. And my advisor, Jim Christie, says, you know what this needs? It just needs to be really, really raw. You just got to like turn all the lights off and just have them shining flashlights in each other's faces. And I was like, that's not going to work. That's silly. And that was my relationship with my advisor, Jim Christie, is like, suggest something nuts. And I'd be like, that's never going to work. And then I would suggest something nuts and he'd be like, that's never going to work. And then eventually we would come to like this agreement. Conclusion. But I said, okay, cast, let's try this. It's probably not going to work, but let's try it. Stupid. And then we did it. And I was like sobbing. And then
inevitably you're like, okay, fine, whatever.
Okay, fine, yeah.
It's always a fun moment when either a director or an actor is like, can I try something really quick?
Right.
That's always when you know something is very interesting is about to happen. Success or failure, like either one. Like it's always so much fun.
Try it. Yeah, and the safest space for creation is the one where somebody can raise their hand and say, I have a bad idea.
Yes, exactly. 100% agree.
And
100%.
And then you test it out, and then we're like, does that work? Yeah, that actually really works. So it was fantastic, and I was very, very proud of it. And it was a very, very good capstone for everything that I had learned in my 2 years there.
That's awesome. And that's so spectacular to hear about all these amazing theses. I feel like some of us were like, well, I guess we're all going to do acting theses just because of the constraints of our year in particular. But like, it's so amazing to hear everyone's different versions of the thesis, even if it was like in a film or otherwise. But
if there was the opportunity for me to have done an acting thesis, I would have done it.
No, totally.
Totally. I really, like it's just so much more convenient to, instead of having to build like this whole extra project on top of everything else, to be able to build it into something that you're already doing. So it's a very, very practical thing. Actors theses for the win, y'all.
Absolutely. So going back to sort of, I guess, the beginnings of things for you, how did you first get started in theater?
Okay. I think I can pinpoint the moment to fourth grade. At recess, and we had recess in the parking lot on the blacktop. It wasn't very fancy. And then one day I went outside and I stood on top of one of those little concrete parking slabs, and I gathered my 3 friends around me, and I said, everybody, I was like 9 years old. I was like, everybody, I have an announcement to make. I'm not really Christen. From now on, I am the Grand Duchess Anastasia.
I love it.
And it was, and I was starting to like assign these roles. I was like, and you're going to be my general, and you're going to be my advisor. And I think that the animated Anastasia movie had just come out, and I was very in love with this concept of the idea that anybody out there could be a princess, right? Because like this one princess gets lost, and it means like it kind of opens it up. And yes, I understood the timeline.
Yes.
Right? I understood that I was not, in fact, Anastasia Romanoff, but it was the idea of like, this idea of like, well, if you act like a princess, maybe some people will start to believe you, which I think is the premise. And the thing is that I really embodied that character. Kind of future performance studies scholar in the making, like this idea of like, like if you embody this thing, it becomes real, the make belief, right? And I had like a little plastic briefcase that I filled with my research, which was at the time it was a Discovery Kids magazine on princesses. It was a little Minnie Mouse perfume bottle, a scarf, a necklace. I had all of my tools. It was my princess kit. Like it was my.
I love it.
I had this one book from the library, the Catholic school library. The only book on Russia was still called the Soviet Union.
Oh boy.
in 1997. I would check that book out like it was research, right? So you could tell, like, oh, you see the pieces, like it's the character research. It's the embodying. We went to Blockbuster. We rented the live action version of the story, Anastasia. And fun fact, that screenplay was written by Arthur Lawrence, who did West Side Story and Gypsy, right?
That's so funny.
Very good man wrote this screenplay for Anastasia, and this whole idea of like, if you act like a princess, people are going to believe you. And there's this magnificent line that I think summarizes my entire aesthetic in that movie. It's where the grandma says to Ingrid Bergman's character, who's like the Anastasia character, she says, like, if you're not really her, don't ever tell me. Right? Like this idea that the fantasy is just so much better. You know? It's like, let's live in this magical world for a hot second. Let's just live there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's so, and my parents, you can only imagine what my parents were thinking watching like their little 9-year-old go around with this princess kit and this obsession with Russian history. And anybody who's friends with me on Facebook following any of my commentary on Ukraine now knows how far back my interest in Russia goes. But yeah, you know, they were like, we need to get this girl in some acting classes.
Yeah. Just to get all that out.
We have to put her in with the other little weirdos who are walking around with their imaginations out for all the world to see. And it went to my first acting class was it was in a one-room schoolhouse in my little Pennsylvania semi-rural suburban area in Montgomery County. And it was almost like devised theater. It was like the kids show up and we all write the story and do all these things, but we didn't have, like, nowadays there's so many wonderful programs for kids,
right,
especially in this area, in the Philly burbs where I am.
No, really.
And I work with a lot of them. It's evolved so much. Like if I had that kind of training at age 9, who knows where I could be now.
Same here.
But it was something that I was always interested in. I did high school theater. I was a show choir kid before Glee made it cool.
Same.
Listen, we know how to do a box step. I already know it. Just you
sure we do.
I don't even need to see it. I know. We know. Look at me. I'm getting getting flustered over here. Yeah. And then I went to college to be a high school history teacher, but I was a double major because I figured that I was going to use theater to make my teaching better, believe it or not, right? And then, circumstances happened in college, and then I ended up downgrading history to a minor and deciding to pursue theater full time. And we could talk about that decision as well. But I mean, that's the clip. It all started with like a little girl and a big imagination who wanted to be the boss of her friends.
Absolutely. No, I 100% get that. And that definitely leads perfectly into like the theme of this show being, so like, what was your overture moment or light bulb of like, oh, but like, I want to do theater for my life.
Right. Yeah. That, and again, like, cause it came from, I was in college and I was doing the double, it was more of like a triple major. Cause you basically it was like theater, history, and education.
Right.
And then I was a junior, or I was going into my junior year when the Great Recession hit. So 2008, I was going into my junior year, and I saw people graduate ahead of me. I graduated in 2010. I saw people graduate ahead of me who wanted to be teachers who couldn't get jobs.
Right.
And it was supposed to, because I wanted to do theater full time. Right? I wanted to do theater forever. But there was this idea of like, well, you need to do the stable job. You need to pick a stable career. And one thing that a recession does, or when these things like the pandemic happens, the things that we previously thought to be stable are revealed to not be so guaranteed after all.
Yeah.
And it gives you permission to think outside the box. Catastrophe gives you permission. This is a silver lining, right? It gives you permission to think outside the box a little bit and take the unsafe path. And that's how innovation happens, right? That's how, like the smartest people in this country become lawyers or investment bankers, right? There are stats on this, right?
Yes.
The smartest people, because they are smart, they take the safest path.
Right.
And what happens when everybody does the safe thing, there's an innovation deficit. Right? You need to take some risks. So that provided me with an opportunity to take a risk. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I graduated into the Great Recession with a degree in theater. And I can't understate or overstate. I don't know how much I could state how bad that recession was.
Right.
Like, I'm sure that you remember, I'm sure that people who are around that, people like, who are around our age who graduated into it remember, I'm sure. But I could not even get a job at the Lego store at the mall. Like, that's how difficult it was to get jobs. I was delivering pizza with Papa John's and I was good at it. Damn it. But in an environment like that, you learn how to create opportunities for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So it was kind of like this perfect storm of horrible circumstances that allowed me to take this riskier path and figure it out, carve out my own path,
Yeah, absolutely. And you found theater and so many wonderful things that have come along with it.
So many
obviously Villanova. Yes. Obviously Villanova, but then you just recently being kind of a strange keyword here, but finish up your PhD at Maryland. Yes. What made you decide to end up pursuing your PhD?
Oh my God, if you had told me that I was going to get a PhD, like something that everybody should know about me is that I am dyslexic. I have ADHD out the wazoo. School was always very difficult for me. And of course, I was growing up in the 90s when these things were underdiagnosed. And, I was in the reading van, and that was pretty much like the extent of the intervention. And I don't remember it helping very much, quite frankly. But I never thought of myself as a scholar. I never thought of myself as somebody who, would be writing dissertations, writing 250-page anything. I am very to the point. I am very like concise and like, here's the answer. Twitter is great for me. I'm like, oh yes, you're
like, I have to finish it in this amount of
things, And it was also, I think it also came from like, maybe it's a little bit of laziness too. When I was little and I was like, I don't really want to write a long essay because you had to like handwrite everything back then. I was like,
no, I understand that one.
And my mother, God bless her, had to help me with my homework every single night. Like she was pretty much my tutor. I owe everything to her. But like, she would cry because of how frustrating it would get with the schoolwork. So like, I did not envision that future for myself at all. Like when I thought about myself doing theater, I thought of myself being a director, and I still am a director. So I got to do that, but when I was at Villanova, it was Dr. Valerie Joyce, who's one of the professors there, recognized a talent in me for analysis. And I think it was in script analysis, especially. I was writing my final paper on the play Ruined by Lynn Nottage. And I think I emailed it to her because she says, like, send me your papers for feedback. And in the feedback, she said, this is really good. She gave me some notes and everything, but she's like, you should submit this to the Elizabeth Cady Stanton Conference on Feminist Research. And I was like,
you're like, what? Conference? What?
Me? What? Okay. So I show up to this thing and I present my paper and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's really good. And I was like,
really?
It was like that moment in Wicked where Elphaba's like, what, you mean like this weird quirk I've tried to suppress or hide as a talent? I spent my free time analyzing musicals for fun. You had like those primitive message boards on Broadway.com back in that's what I was doing during computer class in high school. And so I've been analyzing these musicals all this time. And I was like, oh, you mean I could actually like make a career out of this? And the analyses that I do could make a difference for people in production.
Right.
Like it could make theater better when you do this research, and and then I saw, and we are talking about how she incorporated more women into Three Penny, like that came from her scholarship.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
we were so blessed to have these professors who so seamlessly integrated their scholarship into the production process and made this product that was just absolutely just better. It was just undoubtedly better. So that's what I wanted to do. I said, okay, let me look into PhD programs. I didn't even know what I wanted to write my dissertation on yet. Let me look into this. Let me see if there's a program that is going to similarly blend practice and scholarship the way that Villanova does, and Maryland. And of course, Dr. Joyce went to Maryland. So Maryland was already on my radar. And I applied. So the first year I applied to, I think, two programs that I found that I liked, and I didn't get into either of them. And that was devastating.
Understandably so. Yeah.
It's one thing to get rejected from one program. It's one to get rejected from every single program that you apply for.
Yeah.
Right. And the courage that it takes to reapply.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's something. I mean, my hand was shaking that second time around, but I got accepted.
Yeah.
Right. I got, and in that year, and this is the thing that I tell a lot of people, about how to handle disappointment. Like that year that I got rejected, and I had a whole year before I could apply again. That year, I accomplished so much in that year that changed me forever. I did that off-Broadway. I did Dorian Gray. I think I did both of my off-Broadway things that year. Yes, I will speak for myself. It was that summer. Dorian Gray was the next summer. I never would have been able to do those things if I had gotten accepted when I wanted to.
Right.
Right. So I don't know if whoever believes in guardian angels or that everything happens for a reason, it's, the timeline isn't always what you want it to be. But, if you are a person who knows how to make the most of the in-between periods,
yes,
you will find blessings, in that work that you do, and you'll discover a lot. So it's one of the things where it's like, if you're in the period where you're not where you want to be right now, just like say yes to as many opportunities as you can.
100%.
And make those things better because you're a part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And you've definitely, yes, and you've definitely done that. You're always popping around and doing so many amazing things, and it's so awesome to
I just kind of pop
see
up
all of those come
ball.
together. Exactly.
You must fear where I will end up next.
And then you had a super interesting dissertation topic. You talked about it a little bit. I think it was for my musical theater class because we were talking about Disney and that kind of thing. Do you want to briefly talk a little bit about it and how this topic came up for you? Because you had to write, like you were saying, like 250 pages.
Yeah.
So how did you land on it?
Yeah. So I because you read it in the bio, I wrote about the theater people who went to go work for the Walt Disney Company in the 1980s for like a decade, 1984 to 1994. What is known in popular discourses as the Disney Renaissance.
Yes.
And people periodize the Renaissance differently. Some people will begin it with Little Mermaid, end it with Tarzan. I started in 1984 because that's when there was a change in attitude and a change in leadership. And Michael Eisner, this is what I'll say real quick, is that Michael Eisner, a lot of people don't know this, but he was a theater student. Right? He was a theater kid. He was a college theater dork like the rest of us. Probably the wealthiest one to ever have lived. But he was English and theater, and he wanted to be a playwright for a brief period of time. And he moved to France, and he wore a black turtleneck, and he tried to do the whole, solitary artist thing. And he talks about this in his autobiography. He got lonely and bored, and he said, let me go into TV and make some money. What he would do that was very interesting, and this is important to understanding, unlocking this entire time period, is that he would go into rooms and say, hi, I'm Michael Eisner. I have a degree in theater. Give me something creative to do. And they'd be like, okay, you can be this executive. You got to love being a white man in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly.
I said, to have the but in finding this out, I was like, what if all of us just walked around with that kind of confidence? What if all of us just went into rooms and said, I have a degree in theater, give me six figures? I feel like at the very least, we'll probably get something higher than what we're getting now. So why not? But what he did, because he was not a business guy, he was a creative guy from the start. He'd only ever taken one business class in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes the case to become CEO of Disney. He gets it under the condition that he partners with Frank Wells to handle the money bags. And
Right.
he was a CEO. This is very rare. He was a CEO who viewed theater as a corporate asset.
Mm.
And that was the change, right? That was the change, is when you view theater as an asset and theater people as a strategic asset, you're going to invest heavily in it. And the return, I mean, the rest is history. Like, the returns were massive.
Yeah.
So, and that to me is like, well, you know, we are constantly having to make the case that what we do matters.
Yeah.
Right? And that what we do is worth investing in, and what we do is important. And I think that it's a very, very strong case, right? My research. And
Yeah.
it came about because Disney was an underexplored topic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mostly theoretical. So it was mostly people analyzing Disney texts through various theoretical lenses. So you get your feminist analysis, your Marxist analysis, your
Right.
critical race theory. And I am more interested in production. Like, I do theory. I love theory. I use theory a lot in practice. But in terms of the story that I wanted to tell, I wanted to tell the story of the people.
Yeah.
Right. The laborers, the backs. And this comes from my life as a theater maker. I was like, let me talk about what's going on backstage. Let me write a whole chapter about the history of production management and how it
Yeah.
matters to the Disney Renaissance. Like, let me write an entire section on how moving lights changed the way that people direct.
Yeah.
You know, like, these are very underexplored topics, and I'm happy to fill that gap.
Yeah, no, and it's amazing because there's such a wealth of knowledge and discovery about like Disney and that whole commercialization within that time period that's so fascinating. And so I think it's really awesome. And if people, I don't know if people have the chance to get access to your research about that, but if they can, that'd be amazing to look
Yeah, yeah,
into
you could
because your
find it.
research is really
If you're in
awesome.
if you have access to, like, I think any kind of academic library, and that's I can't wait to turn it into a book. I can't
Yeah,
wait. I can't
I
wait.
think that'll be super awesome. So
It's
you
gonna
should
be,
definitely.
so for those of you that might not have access to the academic sources right now, just stay tuned for the book, because I'm ready to hit the ground running on that.
Yes. Well, and that really segues pretty well to a friend of ours who happens to have a book and was also on the show a couple episodes ago.
Yes.
So our friend, Simply the Best, Dr. Bess Rowan, has the question, what are you writing right now?
What? Oh, this is a great question. I'm so glad. Thank you for asking this. I am currently working on a research paper for ASTR. So that's a theater research conference. It's going to be in New Orleans in the fall, and it's all the PhDs and all the academics. We all get together and share our research, and it's really great. It's really fun. I'm on a working group
Mhm.
that's looking at Eastern Europe. Here we go back to the Russia thing. Listen,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
all circles back to Anastasia in the end. Listen, um, and I am writing. I'm investigating President Zelensky of Ukraine, because he's a theater kid, right? Speaking of
Mm,
theater people who go
there
into
you go.
non-theatrical settings,
Yes.
Volodymyr Zelensky came from a working class town in Ukraine. It was a steel town, right? He's just a steel town girl on a Saturday night looking for the famous life. But there was like, and he and his friends, like, they started a theater company in the early 80s, and then they went on to like this it was kind of like this, like a variety show comedy contest thing that was on Soviet television, and they won,
Mm,
which was a big deal, because they
yeah.
were from Ukraine. And he became a comedian, and then he has the show Servant of the People, which is on Netflix, by the way. I highly recommend it. It has subtitles. It's hilarious. Like, the guy is so funny. Like,
Oh my
this
gosh.
kind of comedy transcends language barriers. It transcends cultural
Oh,
barriers.
that's
It
so
it, it
funny.
really does. like I watch his skits from, the early 2000s and from the 90s when he was in college, and like it's hilarious, like physical comedy, farce.
Love it.
It's just so accessible. He's so accessible. And I understand why he was elected president of Ukraine after this TV show, because the entire thing is it's his manifesto, right? His art is his manifesto for how the world ought to be, right? It's like it's that princess thing, right? If you act like a princess, they're going to start treating you like one. If you act like the president, you're going to get elected president.
Well, that makes me think of Catch Me If You Can, and and shows along that nature as well. Yeah,
absolutely, right. It's if you act like a pilot, they're going to let you fly.
They're going to let you.
Right, whether you should or not, like they're gonna let you do it. But it's that whole thing of like you just like kind of manifest the truth from this. And then he becomes president of Ukraine. A lot of Americans knew him because of the impeachment scandal with Donald Trump. But then, of course, Russia invades Ukraine, and all of a sudden, this theater kid is like the new Churchill. Right. And or at least that's what people are saying about him. Right. And his communication strategy, like he has to persuade the world to invest in Ukraine, which is a tough sell.
Yeah.
That's a tough sell. And he was able to do it. So my research question, right, is how does his theater background inform the way that he's handling this situation now? And what can we as theater people and the rest of the world, like, what does this teach us about the value of what we do?
Absolutely.
Right? What does this show us? So I have a couple theories that I'm testing out in this paper. I've been doing a lot of research. I've been doing a lot of Google Translate because a lot of my sources are in Ukrainian or Russian. And despite my that library book on the Soviet Union, my Russian is not very good.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm doing there's a lot of legwork, but I'm so excited about that research. So I, thinking about turning the Disney stuff into a book, exploring this research on Zelensky. And if my research means that I have to watch Servant of the People, the entire series, oh well.
You're like, then so be it. Then so be
For
it.
me.
Well, and it's so funny that you specifically talk so much about theater professionals who like take that knowledge into other spaces, because I've talked to several of those kinds of people like here on Overtures, and like two of them being people who are taking their theater degrees and then bringing them to law school. So I think it's just so fascinating to see this phenomenon. And do you see like people going into, like, in terms of like the people you've like perhaps researched or seen personally, is there like not to say like popular tracks that like people will take their theater degrees into, but I'm curious if you see certain correlations. Law, I'm sure, is one.
Yeah, law is a big one. In fact, I had a professor from Maryland who left her tenure track job to go pursue a law degree.
Wow.
She wanted to help, I think, immigrants, and it's very noble. I applaud her, and I wish her the best.
Yeah.
My brother was a theater person, and he's now a lawyer. Like, he can tap dance like nobody
like
else.
Crazy.
Right? He's what I call a theater bro.
Yes.
But yeah, they actually, when he was in law school at UPenn, they actually had a light opera society in the law school where it's like a whole bunch of theater kids who went into law school, got together, they put on musicals in the law classroom. All the law students would come, the families would come, they'd get very intoxicated, they'd watch the show. It was so interactive. It was one of the best things I've ever,
oh my gosh.
Theater, it wasn't like the quiet proscenium and let's all clap.
Right.
It was
people who were like in it.
Like you've never seen theater until you've seen a bunch of law students do lacage in a classroom with their drunk friends cheering them on. It's magnificent things. But one thing that I'm noticing, a trend that's very interesting, is the amount of theater people who are either going into politics or going into lobbying or going into some kind of comms. And I've done some comms work in politics, and it's something that's very well suited for us because we come from a philosophy of show, don't tell.
Right.
Right. And it's like when you're trying to persuade people to vote for you, that's one of the best ways to do that, is to take some of these. And Zelensky, of course, going into politics.
Right.
And because, you briefly mentioned me coming in to talk to your musical theater class with Dr. Joyce, talking about our mutual research on the musical Evita. and how that musical has spilled over into the world of political comms.
Yeah.
So comms it's something, that's something that I have, like, I think maybe like a side interest in as a scholar. I'm surprised by how much of my work focuses on media and communications sometimes, but it's something that's very well suited. PR as well, very well suited for theater people.
Great. And then you're working at UArts teaching theater history, which is so exciting and definitely puts both your master's and your PhD to work. Have you been teaching there previously, or is this new starting this fall?
Oh, no. This is actually going to be my 3rd year. This is so funny. I started in the middle of the pandemic. So I started in fall 2020, and it was all over Zoom and everything. It's so fun because I had already been teaching there for like almost 2 years, and this past spring was my very first in-person semester.
Year. Oh,
it was like the first time, and I had been in the building before because when you do theater in Philadelphia, you're
inevitably going to be
point,
Yeah.
At least you should be in Terra Hall at some point. But it was very different in a good way. To be in person this past fall, and I'm looking forward to getting to do a whole year, fingers crossed, knock wood, to really just feel like
you're a part of it, like in person.
Feel like you're part of the whole community. Yeah. We had this magnificent faculty retreat, and it was so great to just be in the same room with these people for the first time.
Your colleagues, like literally.
I'm like, oh, I have colleagues.
It's not just people that I'm on email chains with. Like,
and it's like, oh, that's what you look like. Oh,
yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so special, and I'm so excited for you for this upcoming year. And then you're also a director. You recently, if I saw correctly on social media, that you directed a production of Legally Blonde.
I assistant directed a production of Legally Blonde, the musical.
Love it.
I love that musical. It has a very special place in my heart. I did it 10 years ago myself. I was Paulette it was like in a church basement. It was lovely, such lovely people. Probably, one of like in terms of like, the production resources, probably one of the lowest amount of resources, but the highest amount of spirit.
Yeah. I've been a part of some of those.
And such great energy. And it was, it's such a challenging show because there's a lot of moving pieces and there's a lot of things to contend with. But let me tell you,
very demanding too.
Very demanding. This cast was high school and college age students, probably one of the most professional casts I've ever worked with. So young, but so professional, so magnificent. Yeah. And we did like a lot of like fun things like bigs and littles. Like we were said, let's, because you have like the whole sorority thing. Bigs and littles. So what I said to my littles in the last week of the show, I said, you can ask me any question about theater, no matter how embarrassing, and I will have to answer. And the very last question I got is like at the end of the cast party, one of the cast members comes up and says, what was your favorite part of this production? And I say, the cast. The cast. They were absolutely the heart of everything. And it was like, this has not been an easy year for me. It's not been an easy year for a lot of people. A lot of people are struggling right now. I felt like at the end of this production, I felt like the Grinch, like his heart growing.
Yes.
The cast, their professionalism, their resilience, their just like the overall fun and attitude that they brought to the whole thing. It just made my cold little heart just grow a couple sizes.
That's so special. And it's so amazing to work on shows that have that kind of emotional impact too.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is happening on your end at all. I'm kind of buffering a little bit. My audio seems to maybe be okay, but my video is a bit slow, but I don't know if it's okay on your end or not.
I can hear you. Your video's freezing a little bit. Maybe if we just freeze. I'll pretend like we're maybe they won't know we're here. Maybe it's the T-Rex. Maybe we need
pretend that we're frozen for just a second.
It is. It's probably the reception in this old house.
Exactly. Well, hopefully we should be fine and we'll keep going. I think it's starting to
just power through
solve
as we do.
So. No, that's okay. Same here. I'm freezing myself on my own end. So, but anyway, so you've directed several other shows.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And one in particular that you had in your bio was Dorian Gray, the musical.
Yes.
Year of like reapplying. How did that project come about?
So it actually started, like so many good things.
Did that audio go through? Okay.
I got it. Yeah, you're good. Like so many good things, it started at Villanova University. The musical was written by Christen Madnracchia, and it was his thesis. Speaking of all the magnificent thesis projects, he wrote a musical in a semester. Semester. Like he really just kind of just did it.
That's crazy.
Like he would send me, I had already graduated. He was a year behind me, and he helped me with my thesis. And when he asked me to direct his thesis, I said, absolutely, of course. And I would have done it anyway, because the music is just so beautiful, so fantastic. And I just fell in love with it. And so we got a group together. We did the reading for his thesis. He did very, very well. And then he submitted it to the New York Musical Festival. And it was kind of one of these things where we did not realize that we were getting in over our heads a little bit until we were in it. And it's one of the things that I'm probably most proud of in my career, because there was a lot of doubt over whether or not we would be able to actually go and do it. And fundraising was a big thing, because self-producing an off-Broadway show is expensive.
Absolutely.
So it's like we knew what the number was going to be. Like we had the figure. We knew that we had to completely crowdfund it, because we were all making, I don't know, like $15,000 a year.
Right.
You know, like we weren't going to pay for this out of pocket.
Right.
You know, so we and the cast all came together. We raised the money. Like the community really supported us, really stood behind us. And it's kind of like one of these things of like, you know, like you have to like persuade people that this is a good, like this is worth, you know, donating to or spending money on it. It's not quite the Zelensky dilemma, but it is the same issue of persuasion. Right. So there was a lot of that. And I think that eventually, you know, because people are watching when you post on social media, people are watching, you know, you're telling your story like as you go. And I think people got really invested with this idea of like this ragtag group from Philly. Completely, you know, we built the set in Chris's garage. We spent, and we weren't doing like a very lavish thing. We spent maybe $300 on the set. You know, most of the money was going to pay for the actual theater space,
right?
And the fees and the lodgings, and like we took the seats out of my Honda CRV in the back, and we fit the entire set in the back, and then we have Chris's car, we have the other boxes in there, and we drove up the New Jersey Turnpike. We parked across the street from Theater Row. We wheeled that sucker across 42nd Street. Stage doors. And I think at one point the production manager there was like, you know, we didn't really think that you guys were going to pull this off. But you did. Something along those lines. So it was one of these things of like, you know, a lot of people thought that we weren't going to be able to pull it off, but like we did, because we didn't stop working. And everybody, this was not a Christen thing. This was an everybody thing.
Right.
Everybody pulled their weight. Everybody helped fundraise. Everybody helped get us there. The community helped us. Villanova helped us tremendously. With the rehearsal space. You know, we were able to use Spacey. We were on Channel 3 News. We worked with the local press to like get the word out there. And then we sold out every single night.
That's amazing.
The Acorn Theater on Theater Row, that's like a 200-seat theater. We sold out every single. It was great. It was magnificent.
Well, and it's funny. We'll need to talk about that because I currently work at the stage door there. So we'll have to chat about that afterwards.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
100%.
Stage door I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Oh my God.
And then we of course have a clip of some footage that you have from Dorian Gray. So we'll watch a little bit of it real quick.
Let's check it out.
Oh, buffering. Silly buffering.
No.
There we go.
I I don't wish to know my future. Just a glimpse is all I ask. To know if what I'm searching for will make me whole. Will I find my one companion? Do I stay the way I am, or forget these strong desires burning in my soul? Do I just stand here and...
I might pause it there just for buffering's sake.
That's fine.
However, however, it looks like it was so much fun, and you could definitely tell everyone was putting everything into it, you know.
And you can hear that music. That music is good. That is some good music right there. And that was one of the most consistent notes that we got, was that the music was phenomenally composed. And Chris is just such a good composer. It sounds like, I think the word somebody used was wild horn-esque. And I was like, I'll take that.
Yes, I will absolutely take that. That's amazing.
It was, you know, and so putting a new musical on its feet for the first time, in such a short amount of time, because we did a little bit of a workshop phase. We made a lot of changes from the first one, and then we had to cut it down to 2 hours, which is short for a musical. Musicals are usually like 2.5. You know, 3 if it's the old school ones, but you know, you had to be out of the space by a certain time, or you'd have to pay a fine. You could only put your set, props, costumes, everything in like a 4x4x8 space. So
in one of those festival situations.
A festival situation, you know, it's very, very common. And Villanova really prepared us for that, like doing the thesis, right, in the courtroom, learning how to, you know, and whenever we did the directing scenes, like everybody had their set pieces, and you had to put it in your 2x2 or 4x4x8 little space backstage. And, you know, so Villanova not only connected us all together, because there were a lot of Villanova people in the show. Courtney Bochas, who did the costumes for Everyman, did the costumes for Dorian Gray, and was a character. Right? She was Mrs.
Amazing.
Bree Knight, Lauren Davenport was our stage manager. I don't think I'm forgetting. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting anybody else. my brain is a little. And then we brought in a lot of people that I had worked with locally, a lot of people that I've known for a long time, and people who had been with me through some other challenging theater situations, because, you know, you got to pick the people who you know are going to be able to handle those obstacles. And the cast, like I said, the cast really, you know, pulled through and really stepped up. And it was just, and we won an award. We were voted Best of Fest in our category. And so we came a long way for people who, like, people did not think that we were even going to be able to make it there. I said to Chris over the phone, it was like one of those like dark days where it really seemed hopeless. And I was like, Chris, don't worry, we're gonna go. We're gonna sell out every single night, and we're gonna.
And then it happened.
And then it all happened. It's like, it goes again, Anastasia. If you act like a princess,
it'll happen.
It'll happen. If you act like your show is going to be successful. And then you put in the work, right? Like, I had my princess kit.
You followed through.
You follow through. You invite a whole bunch of people, and you know, it was. And then I went down to go get my PhD, like literally the day after I got.
Oh my gosh,
so,
that's crazy.
I went down with such attitude. You couldn't tell me anything. I was like, Broadway director.
You're like, I'm on top of the world.
And the reviews, the New York critics weren't exactly generous to us. So it was also this kind of situation of like, there's nothing you could say that'll bother me. I handled New York commercial theater.
Exactly. And then I would be remiss to end this episode without chatting a little bit about your small business that you've started, Golden Saga LLC. Tell me a bit about it. What is it? How to get started?
Yeah, well, you know, speaking of theater people who do go into non-theatrical avenues, and I was talking about PR, Golden Saga LLC is a storytelling coaching company. So I coach people whenever they're in a situation where they tell their personal story, as I am doing now. When they tell their personal story for business, for activism, for whatever they need it, and it could be their business's story, etc. Usually businesses and activists and artists and PR is primarily who I work with. And, you know, I'm like, what do I know how to do? I'm a professional historian and I'm a theater maker. And it's like, why should all of the dead white guys get the historian's treatment? Why do you have to be dead?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
like let me make the historian's treatment accessible. Right? Let me make it accessible. So I do like these $65 1-hour workshops, one-on-one. And I have like discounts. I have bartering services, for people that can't afford it, because I'm very, very committed to this idea of accessibility.
Absolutely.
And it's like, if you feel like your lived experience can make a difference, let me help you, learn how to tell that story in a way that can lead to maximum impact. Like, you want that to land for maximum.
Yeah.
The theater, like, this is like a lot of what we do. A lot of like our kind of R&D is it landing?
Yeah.
Right? Is that reading? Is it landing?
Yeah.
Is it landing in the most powerful way that it can? And if not, how can we make sure that it is authentically coming through? Like, it's all, and I always say, integrity over authenticity, right? It's all about like, does it have the integrity? So let's make sure that it does, because if it doesn't,
exactly
for anybody. So,
and you started it pretty recently, or fairly recently in the grand scheme of time, but yeah. How's it going? And have you had some like super fun clients?
Oh my God, I have such amazing clients. And if you look at the Instagram in Golden Saga LLC on Instagram, you can see some of the clients that I've had the privilege of working with. Arande McLean, Peter Andrew Danzig, Harmon Madar, a couple others, Lenny Martelli, like a couple other clients who I just haven't posted yet. A lot of my clients also want to remain anonymous sometimes, because they're telling stories that are very sensitive. So it's such incredible stories. And you'll see like the difference between a lot of them and what they're using it for, right?
Yeah.
They all want to help people. That's the thing that they all have in common, is that they all want to help people. And they know that by telling their story, they're going to make other people's lives easier or better, or give them the tools that they need. So just to use, like, for instance, like Arande as an example, like, he's been doing activism in the city of Philadelphia to end gun violence forever. So it's like, how can we, he comes to me, he's like, I want to level up. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. How to do this, and Peter, who is also a Villanova alum,
yes,
their work on toy collecting, right, and looking at it from a psychoanalytic point of view, particularly in terms of gender. Like, when you see your clients, for me, like, the biggest reward is when you see your clients go out into the world and speak at events and speak at conferences and go on podcasts and do these interviews. And when you see people respond to them like, wow, that really made an impact. I don't feel so alone. I feel seen because you're telling your story. That to me is one of the biggest rewards. And that's, part of what I do. So it's going really, really well. So if anyone's listening to this and they say, oh, maybe I could benefit from a little level up, a little 1-hour skill build, feel free to reach out to me. I do things over Zoom and everything else, but it's a way for me to use my theater knowledge and my professional historian. So a lot of, because I interviewed live subjects for my dissertation, so I've been trained in how to do that properly within the standards, within the regulations and everything else. And everything is extremely consent based. And, and my clients are very protected, which I think is a benefit that I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's 100%.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's amazing. And where can people find both Golden Saga on Instagram, or on Instagram socials, that kind of thing? And then where can they find you on social media?
Yeah. So, it's usually like at Christen Madnracchia or at CH Mandracchia, but I'm the only Christen Madnracchia out there who, that it's one of the benefits of spelling of my very unique Sicilian peasant name. I'm very proud of. So you CH Mandracchia or Christen Madnracchia, Golden Saga LLC, just like at Golden Saga LLC. Mostly I operate out of Instagram for right now. And I have my website, goldensagallc.com. And you can see some of the clients that I've worked with. You can see what I offer. You can see all these things. And I'm updating my website right now. But when it is updated, come back in like a week or so when it's really, really, really nice.
Amazing. And I'll put all the links to those below in this episode,
Perfect.
and I'll put it in like show notes when it eventually becomes podcast form and all that good stuff.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
By that time, the website it'll be a lot better.
Exactly. I understand. Thank you so much for being on. I'll plug mine I'll plug my socials really quick. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Lora_Marjoram. Not on Twitter as much, but definitely Instagram. My website, www.loramarjoram.com. You can find this show on Instagram at Overtures Show, as well as on YouTube. Just search Overtures Show. If you're listening to this in the current moment, you're probably on YouTube. If you're listening in the future, congrats. You already found the Spotify or Apple Music. This will become an episode on there further down the line. I'm still slowly going through and editing all the old episodes. So we're getting there. But links to those shows are in the Instagram highlights. So if you're like, it's not coming up when I'm searching, that's where you can find it. I have upcoming guests in the works. I have not posted about it officially yet. So stay tuned to the Instagram. Got some fun ones coming up. But Christen, do you have any final thoughts for viewers live and in the future?
Just keep investing in theater, whether that's your own theater practice or somebody else's, and just plant those seeds. Just keep planting those seeds.
Absolutely. And with that wonderful nugget of wisdom, I hope everyone has an amazing day, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.